He's a legend in the NFL, a Hall of Famer, a family man, and a Christ follower. And now you can watch his life story unfold on your TV. Pop that popcorn and get ready to be inspired because American Underdog is now available on DVD or Blu-ray. And Kurt Warner is in the house today. Welcome to Spirit 105.3. Kurt, you played in the NFL. You've won the Super Bowl. You know there are kids watching American Underdog and thinking, that could be me someday. So what advice do you have for kids who are dreaming big right now?
Never stop believing. That's the piece of advice. Is I was that kid for a long time. As I watched my sports idols on TV, and I tried to emulate them in the front yard, and believed in my mind that I would one day be in that same position. And even though, as they'll see in the movie, there were some bumps in the road and there were some detours along the way, but that same belief I had as a young kid, it never wavered. I wondered if I would get the opportunity. I wondered if, somebody would recognize the skill in me, but I never stopped believing that I could be that guy. And to me, I think that's always going to be the key for anybody to chase their dream and become what they want to become, is you can't ever get away from believing. You can't let some circumstance or someone along the way take that belief from you.
So now there's a movie about your story, and what's it like having somebody else play you?
That was definitely a process. Talking with Zachary Levi, over the course of the filming, I think you automatically in your mind, when somebody says they're going to make a movie about you, you automatically think, oh, it's going to be a documentary, meaning they're going to say exactly what you said and they're going to act exactly like you act and all of those things. And he had to keep telling me, all right, this is just my interpretation of you, is that this isn't a documentary. We're trying to get the essence of who you and Brenda and Zachary are, but we're not trying to do it just like you. We're not trying to, just be a copycat of who you were. And so, once you kind of get a hold of that and you start to understand the whole idea of the movie and what we're trying to present to people, it's much easier to sit back and enjoy the process. In the early stages, you wanted to get in there and change everything. Like, I wouldn't have said it exactly like that, or I wouldn't have done that with my hands. And everybody had to be like, okay, step back a little bit and allow us to do what we do. And when Brenda and I were able to step back and do that, it really became a fun process, and it's been fun to watch the fruits of that labor and what everybody put into this movie, through the responses that we've got from people.
Let's talk about Brenda, who may just be the real star of American Underdog. I love...
Maybe.
I love that you two met on the dance floor 29 years ago. How did she change your life, Kurt?
Well, I mean, it's all about perspective. I think life, throughout our journeys is all about perspective. And for me, when we met at that time, I was singular focused. There was one thing on my mind, and that was becoming a football star. And I obsessed over it my entire life. And everything I was doing was focused on becoming that person. And one of the biggest times in my life where, when I met Brenda, I stepped back and go, oh my gosh, there's so much more to life than just being a football star.
Yes.
And just chasing that part of the dream, that the dream needs to be bigger. It needs to be wider, that there's more to life. And really the dream at the end of the day isn't worth it if you don't have the right people to share it with. And so I think she broke down a bunch of those barriers that I had put up and those blinders that I had put up, and allowed me to see who I was, what I was capable of, that I could be worthy, of a lot of things without being a football star. So she broke down a lot of those things in me and showed me who I was as a person. And then secondly, I think she broke down those barriers to say, you can have more than that. And life is so much bigger and so much more richer when you have a complete life and you've got someone to share it with, and the amazing kids that she brought to the table. So I think she just taught me so much about what life is all about and who I am and who I wanted to be as a person. And so I'm so grateful, that I met her when I was in college, and, you're around a bunch of college kids or a bunch of college girls that don't have that same perspective, that they're worried about one day at a time and they're worried about the littlest things. And she gave me a bigger perception and opened up my world in a different way that really helped me to attack life differently than I had up to that point.
Love it.
So your journey to the NFL, as you know, we've talked about, is very different than what most people who do go to the NFL end up taking, and took a long time. In the midst of all of that struggle, how did you keep going? What motivated you?
Well, I mean, there was a couple things. I mean, first, what motivated me was that I believed I could be that guy, that nobody ever really showed me. A lot of people, when they look at my story, they look at kind of the down moments, sitting on the bench in college and being cut by the Packers and having to play arena football and all of those things. What I would always look at when, people would, ask me who I was, I always looked at the up times. I looked at the year that I played in college and I was very successful. I looked at, when I was playing in arena football, I was playing in the championship game every year. And those were the things that I hung on to. And so every time I had a ball in my hands, I was very successful. And so that was the first thing, is that I wasn't letting somebody else's narrative dictate what I believed about, who I was and how I could play the game. So that was the first part. And then the second part that really, I think, motivated me was, at the end of the day, I needed to know whether I could or I couldn't. Now, at the time, of course, I believed that I could make it and I could be that guy. But I never wanted to be the guy that sat on the couch when he was 45, 50 years old, watching TV or watching the game and saying, you know what, I could have been that guy if somebody would have just given me a chance. I never wanted to be that guy, because I think a lot of us do. We miss our moment, or we don't really pursue it. Yet in the back of our mind, we always think we could have been that. And so there's a part of us that never gets past that. So for me, it was always like, I just want one opportunity. I need to keep doing this until I get that one opportunity. And in that opportunity, if I can't do it, now I can walk away and go, you know what? I tried, I had the opportunity, and I wasn't good enough. But I needed that opportunity before I was going to walk away from my dream. And so I think it was those two facets, probably more than anything, that kept me going and kept me pushing, even when there was times where it didn't look like it was going to play out.
Oh, Kurt, that is so awesome. My son, Josh, is in college now. He's followed football, followed you all of his life, and he has a question for you. So I printed it out.
Right.
This is from Joshua. He says, when I think of the NFL, I think of the all-time greats, Super Bowls, and plays no one could ever forget. But even in these moments, we must give God the glory. In your opinion, Kurt, what does it mean to give God the glory on the football field and life?
That's a great question. Because depending on where you come from and where your faith is, you look at that question differently. Because I remember when I was on the Super Bowl podium and I thanked Jesus, and, there was a bunch of people that would, look at me and go, oh, what? You're up there saying that, because you prayed more, you're playing in the Super Bowl. Or because you prayed more, you think you're closer to God, that he made your passes fly straighter. And when you thank God, it has nothing to do with those sorts of things. It's more of a feeling of gratitude that you believe God created you for a purpose, and you're grateful for those moments that he gives you along the way. And you recognize those moments and recognize what he brought you through or how he shaped you to be able to utilize those moments for his glory. And that, to me, is what it's all about, is being able to, in our daily lives, recognize the blessings that God's given us, and to be able to walk in them and look for the opportunities to be able to be a representative of him. And that was what I tried to do in my football career. Sometimes it was through words. Most times I tried to do it through actions, to let people know, this is who I am, this is what I'm all about, and this is how I'm going to live. You can expect this on a daily basis. And the reason behind it is because I'm trying to be who God created me to be.
Awesome.
It's just incredible. Kurt Warner, thank you so much for being with us today and for telling the story of your life in the movie American Underdog, which is available today on DVD and Blu-ray. I know Joshua and I are going to make some popcorn and watch it this weekend. Thank you. God bless you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kurt.